Do you ever feel like you and your barber are speaking a completely different language? Well, there's a good chance you might be. All across the world, there are people walking into barbershops right now asking for a fade when they don't really want a fade. Today we're going to break down some of the most misused and misunderstood terms in barbering so that you can become an expert when it comes to asking for what you want in the barbershop. This is so big. This is the jab in the face of like the grooming community right now. Shots fired on this one. My name is Matty Conrad, and this is the Grooming Guide. This is probably the most misused word in barbering. Now, a fade is a haircut that removes the outline of the hair all the way from the temple area back to the nape. So there's no hairline left in place and it goes all the way down to the skin. There's a whole bunch of different types of fades you can ask for. The mid fade, which essentially means that the skin area is kind of revealed through the middle area of the side of the head. You get a low fade that slopes backwards and has a very low skin line. Or you get the high fade, which is really high up into the corner of the ridge of the head. The tightest variation of a fade is called a bald fade. And a bald fade means that the skin area of that fade has been shaved down with either a straight razor or a shaver, meaning that there is absolutely no stubble left in place and it looks completely bald. The next variation up from that is going to be what we call a skin fade. And a skin fade means that the skin area has been set with a trimmer. A trimmer will get very close, but you'll still see a very slight amount of stubble. The last variation on that is called a shadow fade. And a shadow fade means that we've cut the skin area using just a closed clipper, which again is very close, but you're going to see a much more noticeable amount of stubble left in place. If you are somebody that wants your haircut really tight and tapered and really laced up, then ask for a bald or a skin fade. But if you're somebody that just wants something that is faded, that has a little more of a lived-in casual feel to it, you're probably gonna look for a shadow fade. You can achieve a gradient style haircut without necessarily having to be a fade. In that case, you're probably looking for a taper. What a tapered haircut actually is a haircut where the temple area and the nape area are blended down to zero, but there's still a very strong outline left around the ear. A taper is basically like a mini fade, but just for one area of the head. If you're one of those clients that comes in and asks for a little bit of a fade, I want to let you know that a little bit of a fade is not a thing. It's either you're gonna see skin or you're not. What you should be asking for is a tight taper. A tight taper is a haircut that most barbers know that is got a little bit of gradient, but still leaves a pretty strong outline left in place. It sounds like JT stands for just a taper. The number system. If you're one of those guys that has a tendency to walk into a barbershop and ask for a specific number, what you're actually asking for is based around the guards that we use on our clippers. And each one has a number that corresponds to how wide or how narrow that guard is if we use it right against the head shape. The problem is that they don't translate to every person. If I do a number 2 on the sides of a guy with very thick dark hair, it's still gonna look thick and dark. But if I do a number 2 on somebody that has somewhat finer hair, it's gonna disappear and look like a fade. So we can't always use those reliably. They're often just giving a bit of a reference for the overall length that you'd like. If you're looking for a number 2 on the sides and a 4 on top, well, what you really want to ask him for is a haircut that has a little bit of an outline left on the sides but is still kept short, and slightly longer on the top that has a little bit of texture to it. These are better ways to ask for a haircut from your barber than trying to guess what number is going to correspond to what you're actually wanting. Blocked outline. Not all haircuts are faded. In fact, less and less of them are these days. Many modern hairstyles and some classic ones are really grown full in the sides, they don't have a gradient, and they just have a strong outline. And this is what we call a blocked nape. Think about that Don Draper haircut on Mad Men. That was not faded, that was not tapered, that was just a really strong outline. The two most common types of blocked outlines are what we would call the natural outline, which is a little bit rounded in nature, and it usually follows the natural growth pattern of the hair. Or you can ask for a linear squared outline, which is gonna give it a longer, leaner look. If you have something that looks really long and lean, you want to choose an outline that is a little bit more rounded because it has a tendency to make the shape look fuller. But if you've got something that feels a little bit wide and heavy, you want to choose something that's more squared. That's going to make the whole shape appear leaner. Layering. Haircuts that are left a little longer on the sides and swept back, those are called layered haircuts. It's like, Leonardo DiCaprio in The Great Gatsby, or Jude Law in The Talented Mr. Ripley, Harry Styles, and Bradley Cooper. Layering creates more texture and shape on the outside of a haircut instead of a short gradient. The great thing about having a layered haircut is it leaves you enough hair on the sides to push back. We refer to it as a flowback. Feathered versus flowback. I'm constantly surprised how many guys come in and use the term feathered. I mean, the last time feathered hair was in fashion was in the late 70s and early 80s. Feathered hair is layered and heavily textured to look soft and blended. Now, it does flow backwards, but it's a very soft blended look that's usually not as popular with the way people want to look today. So a modern flowback style is a haircut that is left a little longer on the sides, can sometimes be tucked behind the ear or swept back using products, and it creates a more textured, natural look. Blended and disconnected are terms that we use to describe two different types of haircuts that are very short on the sides and a little longer on top. A lot of guys that like to wear fades or tight tapered shapes on the side really like to leave the hair longer on top and create those little overhanging pieces. When we see haircuts that do that, they're called disconnected because the hair on top does not match the length of the hair on the sides. If you want the hair to smoothly transition into the top without any overhang, that's what we refer to as blended. Sometimes when people are asking for disconnected haircuts, they use the word undercut, but that's not exactly what that is. The undercut. Great examples of undercuts are the haircuts from Peaky Blinders or Fury with Brad Pitt. These are haircuts where all of the top is left substantially longer than the hair on the sides, and when it's swept back, or in the case of Peaky Blinders, swept forward, none of it blends together at all. But if you just want that cool swept back hair like David Beckham, that's just disconnected. It all blends together when you push the hair back. But if a haircut is undercut, it means all of the hair on the back and sides is dramatically shorter than the hair that is left on top. If the entire top of the head is longer than the hair on the back and sides, and when you sweep it back there's a noticeable ledge, this is what we refer to as an undercut. An undercut, when it grows in, will almost always resemble a muffin top. And I don't think anything on a man's body should resemble a muffin top. The comb-over versus the side part. This one is frighteningly common and a little bit frustrating, so let's just settle this once and for all. This haircut is called a side part, not a comb-over. This is a comb-over. Comb-over is what a bald man does to hide his shame. If you're wearing your hair to the side in a parted style, that is what we call a side part. So if you ask for a comb-over, unless you intend to shave a cul-de-sac region into the top of your head and leave something really long here that is glued down using gel and makes you desperately afraid of strong gusts of wind, ask for a side part. All right, now that we've got that settled, let's skip to the hard part of the video. The hard part. Hard part is not just a clean looking part line, it's actually a part line that has been shaved into the haircut. This was a popular practice back in the 1920s and 1930s, but it also saw a brief resurgence back during the mid-2010s, where guys would be getting hard part lines shaved into their haircuts. One of the major challenges guys ran into when trying to maintain a hard part is the ever-widening chasm that it seemed to create in their hairstyle. The one benefit of having a hard part is that if you wear a parted hairstyle, it makes your part straight every single time you part your hair. But it requires an awful lot of maintenance to keep it from looking like little sprouts are coming out of your hairstyle. So unless you wear your hair very, very short and are using this for some sort of artistic principle, most guys tend to avoid this one. Now, where you decide to place a hard part really matters for your hairstyle. A lot of guys would wear it more to the outside of a hairstyle, and that looks sometimes really cool, especially because the hair next to it is kept very short. Now that the center part hairstyle is becoming a lot more popular, I would avoid doing a hard part down the center, unless you want to look like Guy Pearce in the movie Lawless. You do not want to look like Guy Pearce in the movie Lawless. The edge up or line up. One of the benefits of having a boxed out and edged up hairstyle is it's really flattering to rounder face shapes. Think of guys like Michael B. Jordan, or even the man himself, Barack Obama. When asking for an edge up or a line up, what you're actually asking the barber to do is to create a stronger looking outline across your forehead and into your recession area. This can be really sharp looking for shorter haircuts. In fact, it's what we call boxing out a client, which means it creates a more square profile around the interior of the haircut. If you have a widow's peak, never ask for a lineup, because a lineup is going to cut that widow's peak square across, and as that grows in, once you try and recover that hair, it's just going to stick straight up and make you feel like a magical unicorn. I honestly never thought I would say this, but mullets are cool again. They're a lot more versatile than they used to be. The one identifying factor that you're going to find with all mullets is that they are much shorter on the sides than they are on the back. back. You know, that whole business in the front, party in the back kind of vibe. And unfortunately, the word is now kind of lost a little bit of its meaning because a lot of hairstyles that are referred to as mullets have a little bit more of an artistic flair. It really is just a term that describes any haircut that's longer in the back now. But there is a difference between a mullet and a flowback style. The real indicator is, are the sides shorter than the back? And if the sides are shorter than the back, then you, my friend, have got yourself a mullet. But if the sides of the shape are long enough that you can sweep them back and they blend into the back, that's a flowback style. Look at actors like Milos Ventimiglia and Matthew McConaughey. You know, that hair that flows out to the sides from behind and below their ears. And I think this is a really cool look, but they've clearly got enough hair on the sides that it's able to kind of sweep back into that style, which means this really isn't a mullet. It's just a cool flowback style. So if you want a hairstyle that looks like this and is very cool and has a little bit of action in the back section, just ask for a flowback that has a little bit more enhancement behind the ears. But if you're ready to go full Billy Ray, just ask for a mullet. Volume versus lift. Other misused terms in the barbershop are terms like volume. Now, volume usually describes hair that has a fuller appearance, something that kind of pushes away from the head shape, so it creates a much larger kind of overall shape. But a lot of guys are really looking for just a little bit of height in the front, which helps to stretch out the face shape. And if that's what you're looking for, just tell the barber that you're looking for lift. Lift is essentially volume that goes straight up, not out in all directions. Lift is up, volume is everywhere. Now let's talk about styling, because a lot of guys will refer to hair as spiky, when they really should be calling it textured. Now, spiky is not so much a haircut as much as it is the presence of way too much styling product. Overuse of styling product is gonna make the hair stick up like you're on the first day of grade 9 and your mom just bought you that first tub of dippity-doo. And if that's the way your hair looks these days, go home and shower, because we're looking for more of that cool, effortless, disheveled look, and that is what we call textured. It actually creates a more subtle, piecey, rough look to the hair and should not be super dependent on a massive tub of product to create it. The longer hair gets, the more it has a tendency to flow, so keep in mind that a textured style is almost always going to be a fairly short haircut. Fine hair versus thinning hair. A lot of guys have what we call fine hair, and they mistake it as thinning hair. And there is a difference. Fine hair, we're referring to the actual diameter of the hair shaft itself. If it's not as thick as it could be, then it is a little bit skinnier and therefore fine. It means the hair is a little bit floppier and it doesn't have as much rigidity when it comes to styling. So if your hair has a tendency to lay down really flat to your scalp, there's a good chance that it's fine hair. Thinning hair is what happens when there is less growth per square inch. So the less hairs you have growing per square inch on your scalp, the thinner your hair appears to be. It is entirely possible to have thick hair that is thinning and fine hair that is thick. The problem is when guys ask for their hair to be thinned out, what they're usually asking for is texture. They want to see the hair separate and create more of a piecey feel. To create that airspace and that separation, getting your hair thinned out with a pair of thinning shears isn't necessarily going to yield the results that you're looking for. A lot of the time, what you really just need is to create more texture. So when you want to ask your barber to see those pieces in that short, thick hair, just ask for it to be texturized, not thinned out. Haircut versus hairstyle. Now, I know it seems like these should be the same thing, but they're not really. Like, a haircut is often a very simple utilitarian idea. It's short and easy and requires very little maintenance, like a crew cut or something that is too short to really use any kind of products. But when it comes to more of the celebrity hairstyles that you see, we refer to them as a hairstyle for a reason. And that's because they require styling. The longer your hair gets, the more of a need you have to use products, a blow dryer, and some sort of tools and utensils to be able to recreate the shapes that you see on your favorite Hollywood celebrity. This means products and probably a blow dryer and maybe some tools. So ask your barber or stylist before you get a hairstyle like that how much maintenance is going to be required. You might even want to ask them for some styling tips. We're usually pretty good at that. Okay guys, I hope that was helpful for you, and I hope we explained some of the terms that you would be using in the barbershop to ask for exactly the haircut that you want. Until next time, good luck and good grooming.